Would you like to learn how to make fresh homemade muffins in whatever flavor you want? Stay tuned for the next episode of Hilltop Stovetop. Hello and welcome back to Hilltop Stovetop, the show where we're teaching you how to make great meals in an ordinary kitchen. Today we're going to be making muffins, and this is a special request from my friend Aya in Japan, who's asked me to teach her how to make muffins. So we're going to actually go to do two kinds of muffins today. Once you learn how to make muffins, you can make any kind of flavor that you want. They technically come under a category called quick breads. And they're quick for a reason. Very easy to make, don't require any special equipment. You'll notice that I don't have any mechanical things out here other than I've got my oven preheating to 400 degrees. And all you do is whip together all of your ingredients, pop them in your muffin tins, and away you go. A couple of things in preparation for this. First off, I'm sure a lot of you like to have a muffin with your coffee in the morning, and you're thinking, that's a nice quick, easy, relatively light breakfast. But when you look at the ingredients list, if you're somebody that likes to go out to your local coffee shop, a well-known Canadian coffee shop chain, their blueberry muffin lists out at 435 calories for one muffin. And if you looked at the ones in the bakery, they're probably similar, those big muffins. But when you make them yourself, you've got some control over that. And this particular recipe that I'm going to make it's a banana blueberry muffin. According to the Betty Crocker site where I got this recipe from, it's 100 calories per muffin. Now they're going to be smaller than the ones at your local coffee shop, but probably way better for you, and you know what's going into them. So we've got a couple of things happening here. Got the muffin tins, which I have already sprayed with oil. If you don't have these kind, which are silicone muffin tins, and I love these because everything pops out so easily. If you've got just the regular metal muffin tins, either put the paper liners in them, or you can take parchment paper, cut it into squares, wet it so that it's easier to handle and squish down into the corners, and then that will pop up and you'll have your wrapper on your muffin. If you make a batch of muffins, and one batch makes 12 muffins usually, they're something that freezes very well, so you can make a batch on the weekend and then just take one out every day for your breakfast or however you want to do it. So we're going to start off. First thing we do is we're going to take our dry ingredients and mix them all together. So I've got 2 cups of flour. I'm going to put that in my bowl, but I'm going to leave out just 2 or 3 tablespoons, and you'll see in a minute why I'm doing that. Got 2/3 of a cup of white sugar, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon or so of ground nutmeg. And I'm going to mix those all together. That's the dry ingredients. Now these last 2 tablespoons of flour, I'm just going to set this off to the side for a minute. To get the wet ingredients, we're going to start off with the banana. Now, this is very fortunate that I'm going to do this because I had 1 banana left. And you know that last banana, it's always a bit of a pain. If I wasn't making muffins today, I could have taken this banana and just put it in the freezer, peel and all. Put it in the freezer, and you're going, oh, you never freeze bananas? Well, the reason you do that is if I had put this in the freezer, when I took it out a few days later or a week later, whatever, all I'd have to do is break the end off of it, give it a squeeze, and it would already be pre-mashed. It would be liquid, and looks kind of disgusting, but it's perfect for a banana bread or muffins or something like that. So we're going to cut that up, and we want to mash that up. Now I could use my stick blender to do this, but I'm just going to take a fork and mash this up. This is, if you've got a banana that is a little bit riper than this one is, that would be even easier, but we're still good enough. Okay, so we've got our bananas all mashed up. We're going to add in 1/4 cup of oil. Now, if you are really trying to make these low fat, what you could do is instead of the oil, you could add in 1/4 cup of applesauce, and that would have the same effect. We've got 2/3 cup of milk. And we have 1 egg. And we're going to take all these liquid ingredients, and mix them up well. Okay, and then we're going to add the liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients. Now, this is a critical part in our mixing here, because the secret to good muffins is to not overmix them. You want to put them together just enough that your flour is moistened. So we're going to take all of this, dump it all in, take a quick little mixer. And that is it. We're going to stop right there. Now, remember I said this was blueberry banana muffins. So we're going to take, I'm going to use frozen blueberries. And whether you use frozen blueberries or fresh blueberries, doesn't matter. But the key when you're adding fruit to a muffin like this, if you just put it in, it's inclined to want to sink down to the bottom of the muffin cup. So you end up with a whole lot of fruit on the bottom, not very much throughout the muffin as a whole. The other thing is with frozen blueberries, if I was to thaw them first, I'd end up with all that liquid, which I would either have to drain off, giving us a drier muffin, or we'd end up with kind of purple muffins. So what I did was I left the blueberries in the freezer. I measured them out, but I left them in the freezer. And I'm just going to take them out of the freezer here. Pop them in my bowl. And then the reason I kept out that last little bit of flour is I'm just going to sprinkle that over them. And anytime you're adding fruit to a muffin, if you do this where you coat them with a little bit of flour, that helps to keep them from sinking down to the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to dump those in. Not even going to use this. I'm just going to fold it in with the spatula. Again, minimizing the amount that I am mixing things. You still end up with a fair bit of purple color, but not as much as if we had the liquid. Okay. So then we're going to take our pre-greased muffin tin, and you want to fill your muffin tins about 2/3 full is norm. One trick is if you had, say you wanted to make just half of this, which you could do. You can't split your egg in two, but you could just decrease the milk just a little bit and put in the whole egg anyway. But then you'd end up with 6 empty muffin cups here. So what you would do then is just put a little bit of water in each one. And the reason you do that is if you don't, you end up with your pan can get kind of lopsided and burn where they're empty. So by putting just a 1/4 of an inch of water in the bottom of each one, that evens it out. Now, one thing to be careful, like I said, don't over mix it, because if you over mix it, what happens is that batter gets really tough, and that's where you get a dome that kind of forms on the top of them, or a point, really, not so much a dome as a point on them. And you don't want tough muffins. And we try to even them out just a little bit here. And if you have any blueberries that are obviously sticking out, pop them down in, because you don't want them burning on the top. Make sure they're covered up with a little bit of batter. There we go. So there's our first batch of muffins. We're going to pop those in the oven for 18 to 20 minutes. And they will be warm and delicious and wonderful. And while they're in the oven, we're going to mix up the second batch. So we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Okay, so here we are back for round 2. So this one, we're going to make some apple caramel pecan muffins. So I've got an apple here and a fine grater. And I could just take a knife and chop this up. But since I've got the grater, all I'm going to do is grate the whole apple. Okay, that should probably be enough. There we go. And instead of the oil, instead of a 1/4 cup of oil, I'm going to use the applesauce this time. And so we're going to mix up so that'd be about the equivalent of the 1/4 cup for the oil, and another 1/4 cup for the instead of the banana. So we're using apples instead of blueberries, and applesauce instead of the banana. And then we're going to add in our 2/3 of a cup of milk and our egg. And there's the liquid ingredients ready to go. Now, instead of white sugar, I'm using brown sugar because we want more of a caramely flavor. But we still have 2½ teaspoons of baking powder. And I knew I had a fork in here somewhere. Yep. Mixing together the dry ingredients. And just the same as we did with the blueberries, we're going to take all of our wet ingredients and mix it just the bare minimum. Now with the apples, we didn't have to mix those with the flour because they're so fine they won't settle down. Okay, so there's that mixed together. Again, we have our muffin tins already greased. And now what we're going to do with these ones is sometimes what's called a surprise muffin. So we're just putting in a little bit of batter. And then for each one, I've got here a little mixture of about half and half brown sugar and pecans. So I better make sure I've got all of the bottom of the pan covered. Oh, that looks like our blueberries are done. I put a little bit of the pecan and brown sugar mixture. And then we have here some soft caramels. And we're going to put one in those in the middle of each. Now you could make your own caramel sauce, but I figured it was just as easy to go to the store and buy some soft caramels. And then we take another spoonful of batter, put it on top of that. Okay. And we're going to continue on with that. But first, we're going to take these blueberry ones out of the oven. We're going to try. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Yep. So that was about 19 minutes in the oven. And there they are, folks. Blueberry muffins. Looks just like at the restaurant. So we're going to pop those out, and then we'll finish making these other ones and pop them in the oven. We'll see you in a minute. Okay, so we've just about got these finished. So once you put the second layer of batter on, then we're just going to finish it off with just a little bit more of this pecan and brown sugar mixture. And then one more caramel on the top. And, oop, these ones want to stick to the bottom of the container here. The reason they call them surprise muffins is because of that bit that's in the middle. And instead of caramels, you could, the easiest way to do it is actually to just put a little bit of jam in the middle. So any kind of jam that you want. You have your basic batter, put half of it in, a glop of jam, and I mean, I think they call them fruit explosion muffins or something like that if you get them at the coffee shop. But in this case, we've got the caramel in there. And you'll notice that I did kind of squish the caramel down in a little bit so that there's some batter up around the edges, because this is going to melt and we don't want it running off the side. Or maybe we do, I'm not sure. Anyway, these are going to go into the oven. These will be more than the 100 calories that the banana blueberry muffins are, because we've got that extra candy in there and the extra sugar in there. But it'll still be a far cry from the 400 or 500 calorie ones that you get on the commercial level. So we'll pop these in the oven, and then when they're done, we'll have a look at both of our sets of muffins side by side. We'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes before those other muffins are ready to come out of the oven. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about muffins in general and how they are so versatile. Now, we've added blueberries, but you can put any kind of fruit that you want in them. These are also what's called a sweet muffin, so you could actually reduce the sugar in them quite a bit and maybe add some cheese and some ham and make it a savory kind of a muffin. Or vegetables if that's happened to be what you wanted to do. But the key is for all of them to be sure that you don't over mix it. Just mix it the bare minimum, and that's going to make the difference. So let's just cut into one. These have had a little bit of a chance to cool, and there we go. So this one we've got kind of ended up with the blueberries all on one side, but they are up near the top as well. And that makes a big difference, and they're not too tough. I've already tasted one, and they were pretty darn good. So that's your key to muffins. Do keep them simple, but the other thing is that they freeze well. You could wrap each one of these individually, have them in the freezer, and then just throw one in your lunch on a daily basis if that's what would work for you. And if you are somebody who likes the idea of baking but doesn't want to have all of these ingredients all over the place, I have found that muffin mixes work quite well. So you can buy, say, a bran muffin mix or just a plain muffin mix. All you have to do in most cases is add water. Sometimes it's water and an egg or something like that. Like you add liquid ingredients. But you have the option to add in the bananas, to add in the blueberries, whatever you want in those mixes, and make it a little bit faster. Not a lot faster, but a little faster. So if you don't happen to have the flour and the baking powder and all of those kind of things in your pantry, because you're new at this kind of thing, go ahead and buy the mix. Quite all right. It's still going to be healthier for you than buying the commercially prepared muffins. So on that note, the ones that we're going to be taking out of the oven, like I said, are going to be a little bit higher calorie. One thing about these, be very careful. There we go. When you're ready to eat them, make sure these ones are cooled before you bite into them, because that's one thing about caramel or anything like that. It burns like crazy. And it's not something that you can blow on it and it'll cool. It could be kind of dangerous, so be careful with that. Oh. Now, does that look amazing or what? So what we're going to do here, we are going to just see the caramel did ooze out, as I suspected it would. Now, if you are using a silicone pan like I have, make sure that you get a plastic kind of a knife to use with it, because a metal knife would cut through the silicone, and you don't want to be messing with that. And if we don't get this caramel back in the muffins while it's still hot, it's never going to end up there. So. And there they are. Now let's just cut into one of these and see what it's like. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Hilltop Stovetop, where we made caramel apple muffins and blueberry muffins, and learned a little bit about how you can do other variations on muffins. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know if there is something that you would like to learn how to cook, and I'll see what I can do. Bye-bye for now.